Good morning. Welcome to MCC of the Blue Ridge. We are so happy to have all of y'all here this morning. We want to welcome our first-time guests to fill out an information card found on the back side of the pew in front of you. And you can place these in the offering plate during service. We would also like to invite you to visit the Welcome Center in the back for a guest packet, cookies, and water. If everyone could please sign in on the attendance pads found at the end of each row, we would appreciate that. This is, Bonnie just waved it there. This is a great way to update any of your contact information and just to let us know that you're here. This Sunday and next Sunday will be the last Sunday to participate in a training session for worship participation. Every Sunday you see a group of us ushering and up here speaking and just participating in the worship service. If that's something you would like to be a part of, please, please, please come to a training either today after church or next Sunday after church. If you can't make it, see Sandra. I'm sorry, what? Oh, there's food today too, y'all. Travis and Michael brought some food and I saw Girl Scout cookies. So I'm going to be there. And even if you have been participating in worship service until this point, we're just going to be going over things. It won't take but maybe a half hour, and there's cookies, so please stay. Let's see, spiritual formation class. Kathy Fisher does that. It's a Bible study of sorts. But it meets on Tuesday at 7 p.m. in Celebration Hall. Next week starts our participation with Family Promise, the week of March 4th. If you would like to donate individually packaged snacks and drinks, no sodas or sugary drinks, they like to keep it at least quasi-healthy for the kids. Please bring those donations next Sunday. We'll also have a basket up here on the altar so that after service, Sandra and I run to Kroger and we just buy a bunch of stuff for the week for them to have to pack lunches and things like that for the kids. To wrap things up, I want to thank everyone for your donations to the food pantry. George says that we've had great donations in the last couple of weeks, so we just want to recognize you guys for that. And to tell you that in the paper this morning, there was an advertisement for Walgreens. If you have a Walgreens card, extra laundry detergent is 99 cents. And laundry detergent is one of those things that you really can't get with food stamps, so they're always looking for, things like laundry detergent, dish detergent, toothbrushes, things of that nature. So 99 cents at Walgreens this week. Now, passing of the peace. This is something we like to do to go around and say hi to each other every single morning. It's a way to greet each other and just to recognize everyone for being here this morning. Passing the peace can look like anything from a handshake to a wave to a hug to a high five, whatever you're comfortable with. So may the peace of Christ be with you. And also with you. Go love on somebody.
morning. Please stand as you're able and join us in singing I Will Follow. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. If this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah. seatbelts for the second, third verse.
Don't you love those drums and that guitar and the piano going? Just a good tambourine flying through the room. I had it made. If you were asleep, planning to sleep this morning, forget that. You'll be awake. You'll be awake. It's always important that a church be known, I believe, as a praying church. We don't just come to sit here and look pretty and get our check mark and tell our moms and dads we went to church today. Hopefully we come and learn something, and hopefully we come and be touched so that we can go out and pray through the week for one another. In our book this morning, we have Jean asking prayers for our neighbor Nelson, whose 29-year-old nephew passed away this weekend. I want to continue to pray for our brothers and sisters in Florida who are dealing with the horrible shooting at that school, and praises for those kids that are speaking up, You know, back when I was a young kid, a lot of people began speaking out about an issue. It took a while, but that ended a war. We hope these kids will get their message across. Prayer requests that you did not get into the book this morning. Anyone? Miss Elizabeth?
I have praise. My daughter's last, because of our administration's earned income credit, will allow her to get a car. It's already in the process. She has a brand new job, and we're going to put him in daycare, which means, hallelujah, we will have normality for the moment.
Normality for the moment.
It's because she's working really hard with this. She knows exactly what she wants to do.
Praises Elizabeth's daughter is getting her act together, and her grandson, Elizabeth's grandson, is getting into daycare. Bless their hearts. Others. Trips? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Our couple of weeks, niece with throat cancer, mom with a stroke, people going out on their sobriety, our own health concerns, troubles at jobs. Believe it, sister, God will be answering. Trips. Okay, we'll get that one a little bit later. Pat?
My brother.
Okay, prayers for Pat's brother. Jean?
My sister's mother-in-law.
Okay, sister's mother-in-law passed away. Josh?
And that my debt's being cleared.
Yes.
Yeah.
Prayers for debt being cleared. Hallelujah. Richard?
Prayers for Walt's continued heart problems, and prayers for a family that I feel for at least all but two have turned against.
Family problems and issues, and also Walt's health issues. Anything else?
There's been a lot of people who've had illnesses, and prayers for continued recovery for those with illnesses.
Right. Lots of sick going on. Lots of sick.
Does anybody know how Jordan is doing?
We received news this week that Jordan Christopher is in hospice, result of some breathing issues, and I haven't heard any more update on that. If anyone knows where he is, I'd like to have that address.
I'll see what I can do to help.
Okay.
Find that for you.
Jordan was a member here for many, many years. Trips. Pardon? Me. Okay. Continue prayers for Trips' mom, otherwise known as Sandra. Rhonda?
Prayers for our leadership at all the levels in our country, for wisdom and making the best decisions possible for
Prayers for the leadership of our country, top to bottom, for right decisions. Anybody have a prayer request they didn't get in the book today? Like to raise your hand so we can pray for that during this week? Amen. Would you pray with me? If you're near someone and would like to touch hands, we'd like to encourage you to do that. Loving God, we come this morning with our hearts full of praise. We tend to share so many of our prayer requests and not often our praise. Our praise that you brought us together. As Sister Harriet used to say, you woke us up in our right mind. You got us here to church. We ask, loving God, that you continue to bless this congregation. Bless us as we move forward in finding our next pastor. We thank you for answered prayers with Elizabeth's daughter. We ask that you be with her and help her to stay on path through this process. For those that have lost loved ones, those that are suffering from illnesses, whether that's just a cold or all the way to cancer, we ask your healing touch and your comforting touch be present with them. For our country, we ask that you also be with the family of Reverend Billy Graham and all those that were touched by his ministry over the years. Be with us now as we continue in worship. Help us to have open hearts, open spirits, so whether it's through music, through the word, maybe just through seeing somebody nod at the right time, our hearts will be encouraged and our spirits will be lifted. We ask all these things in your holy name. Amen.
Good morning. Comes time in our service where we're asked to give back. I'm going to read a little bit about what the Apostle Paul wrote. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportion to his faith. If it is serving, let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it is encouraging, let him encourage. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it is leadership, let him govern diligently. If it is showing mercy, let him do so cheerfully. Please give his reading.
Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows fall? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven
watches me. I sing because I'm happy, and I sing because I'm free. As his eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
His love, His breath is all we learn. Whose love reveals our sacred word. Whose spirit forms one family. Whose grace brings peace and harmony. Amen.
If you'll please join me in the bold print for our responsive reading. This is adapted from materials by Tom and Schumann. Lent calls us to journey, this and every day, following Jesus wherever he leads us. Lent calls us to journey, the place where God covenants with us, to receive the new names we are given. Lent calls us to worship together, to tell future generations the good news. Lent calls us to practice justice, to bring God's hope to all people. Lent calls us to faithful living, to trust the one who gives us life. Lent calls each of us to take up our cross, to trust the one who bears it with us. Lent calls us to journey with God. Let us worship God, who walks with us this and every day. And now a reading from Genesis chapter 17, verses 1 through 7, 15, and 16. This is in the Message, and it's up there. When Abram was 99 years old, God showed up and said to him, I am the strong God. Live entirely before me. Live to the hilt. I'll make a covenant between us, and I'll give you a huge family. Overwhelmed, Abram fell flat on his face. Then God said to him, This is my covenant with you. You'll be the father of many nations. Your name will no longer be Abram, but Abraham, meaning that I'm making you the father of many nations. I'll make you a father of fathers. I'll make nations from you. Kings will issue from you. I'm establishing my covenant between me and you. A covenant that includes your descendants, a covenant that goes on and on, a covenant that commits me to be your God and the God of your descendants. God continued speaking to Abraham and Sarai, her wife. Don't call her Sarai anymore. Call her Sarah. I'll bless her. Yes. I'll give you a son by her. Oh, how I'll bless her. Nations will come from her. Kings of nations will come from her.
I'll be sitting back there thinking, I could never get up there and do that. Trish did a great job. Thank you. I was so tickled when I saw this morning that Seth had picked out El Shaddai. Talk more about that in a little bit. It's one of my favorite songs. Some of you know the story, but many of you know Amy Grant. I went to see Amy Grant one time at the Hollywood Bowl in California. In the midst of the whole concert, there was an intermission. And when the curtain opened next, she was sitting on the stage. just Amy and a guitar sitting on a stool. And she sang El Shaddai at that moment. And it just echoed through that Hollywood Bowl. And I'll never think I'll ever hear anything as great and wonderful as that. Faith and trusting God. You ever have a problem with that? Yeah, I think we all do. And we are no different than Abram or Abraham in this story. You know, if you know a little bit of this Old Testament history, you know this wasn't the first time God had shown up and told Abraham that he was going to be the father of a great nation. And there was kind of a problem because at that time he was in his 80s. His wife was in his 70s. They hadn't had any children. This is not one of those times in the Bible where they give big, long ages, and you know they couldn't have been that old. They really were this age. And when that happened, Abraham said, okay, I followed you all the way from Ur. I'll trust you for this. And he trusted God for about 10 years. No pregnant Sarah. So the Hebrew law had this rule, this little loophole, where you could have a son by a servant, and it would be counted as your child. So Abraham and Hagar, cut to the chase, had a son named Ishmael. But that wasn't the one God intended to be the beginning of these great nations. So about 13 years later, think about that next time you get tired of waiting on God. It's already been 10 years, now it's 13 more years. God shows up again. We don't have anything in the account that says that God had any contact with Abraham during that whole 13 years. I have trouble waiting 2 days. I sometimes have trouble waiting 30 minutes. I didn't go to Hardee's or McDonald's either one this morning because there were 3 cars ahead of me. 13 years later, God shows up to Abraham. Abraham now is 99 years old. Interesting, same age as Billy Graham this week. And God showed up and said to him, I'm the strong God. Now the word for that in Hebrew is El Shaddai. It's the first time that name shows up here in the Bible, and it shows up another, 50 times after that. And the translations over the years have kind of cleaned it up a little bit. Hang with me. I'm the strong God. I'm the mighty provider. The actual translation of that word, El Shaddai, is the mighty breasted one, the one who sustains all of creation. You'll never hear that song again, sing the same, will you? But God was saying, I'm the one that's going to provide everything you need. I'm going to be the strong God before you. And I think it's interesting that because when God starts talking, overwhelmed Abraham fell on his face. I believe if God spoke directly, verbally, to any of us, we'd probably fall on our face or on our backs, one or the other. We'd definitely be passed out somewhere or another. And God begins then reviewing what he had promised before to Abraham. This is my covenant with you. You'll be the father of many nations. If I were Abraham, I would have said, excuse me, you told me that 25 years ago. What's happening here? God's time is God's time. And many times it's not our time. And part of faith is trusting that God's watch is more efficient than our watch. I'm going to make you the father of many nations. And then he changes his name. You know, this happens in the Bible a lot. Remember Peter, Simon, and others. He says, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Somehow we thought that he says, I'm going to make you the father of the Hebrew nation. But he says here, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Not just that one select group. Kings will come from you. I'm establishing my covenant between me and you. It goes on forever and ever and ever. God's promises are true, folks. They're not true until the next pastor comes. God's promises are true. They're not true until the next time you run into a problem. God's promises are true. And he goes on and he brings up a new aspect of this covenant because he says, and Sarah, remember Sarai, your wife? Now she's going to be called Sarah, which translates into princess, giving her part of this lineage of all these kings. That's the first time Sarah has become involved in this covenant. Before it was just God and Abraham. Just God and Abraham. But Sarah comes into this. Now it's a joint venture. I think so much about Abraham's faith because, he's sort of the paragon of faith. And I have to believe that he had some doubting moments during that time. We know he tried to push things along with Hagar. And I'm surprised mostly at his faith that stayed true, so that when this story finishes, and it's really cool because the next verse is Sarah laughs. That's how the baby got its name, Giggles. But they went on and proceeded to try to have a child at 99 and 89. Some kind of faith in that. God does things in unusual ways. We have this crazy way of thinking we know better, and we hope God agrees with our plan. Huh? We've got it figured out, God. Now you just give your blessing on this, and it'll all be okay. And I see God just shaking God's head and going, go ahead. Try it your way. Mess up a few times. I'll come back and talk to you again. He promised this child. He promised this child. For 13 years, Abraham and Sarai have been living with this child that they thought was going to be the leader. And God says, no, he'll be a leader of another nation, but I've got someone special, more special for you. So often faith involves waiting. Waiting. And it's where our faith grows as we wait, as we trust God in the in-between times. You ever had God give you an insight or a promise of something that's to be, and it takes a while to get there? It takes a while to get there. I remember we started looking for a church building. There's this dinky little tiny church over on Colonial, kind of across from Heavenly Ham there. People want us to buy that little bitty church. And even as few as us that are here today would have been crowded in that church. But God had something better in mind. And it took a while of waiting and waiting until this came about. I believe that God knows that we have trouble waiting because over and over in Scripture, God promises us that we can depend on God. And truly, God is the one person, the one entity that we can depend on. In Psalm 118, verse 8, it is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in people. I trust a lot of folks, but people will inevitably let you down. They may not mean to, they may not want to, but we just can't be all that God can be to us. In Isaiah chapter 26, again, we're told this important way of trusting and waiting on God. Trust in the Lord forever, for in the Lord is everlasting strength. Everlasting strength. And lastly, when I think about faith, when I think about trying to understand faith and understand trusting God, the verse that always comes to mind is Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Abraham didn't know where he was going when God took him out of Ur, but he trusted that God saw the destination. Abraham didn't understand when God said, you're going to have a child, they'll be the beginning of all nations. And he waited and waited and waited, nothing happened. He tried to take it in his own hands. He thought he could see the answer. And when God did not give up on Abraham, did you get that? Abraham tried a different way, but God did not give up on Abraham. God came back again and said, yo, remember me? Hey, Abraham, we've got this deal going. And this is still true. The evidence of things not seen. The evidence of things not seen. I wonder if it's really faith if we can see the end already. There's a commercial about some loan company, and this guy says, I know you believe in me, and so when I fall back, you're going to catch me. You know that commercial I'm talking about? The guy who was supposed to catch you hadn't been prompted on this. If I were going to live this out today, I would have said to, let's see, who shall I pick? I would have said to Elizabeth, now at this point in the service, I want you to come up, and I'm going to tell you to fall back, and I'll catch you. Now, if I just did that right now and said, let's come up, fall back, and we'll catch you, shoot her act just like she is now, like, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But Abraham had been told by God, now, for the second time, I'm going to develop a nation out of you. I'm telling you that there is evidence to be seen. And I believe what joy there must have been in Abraham's heart when Sarah gave birth to that baby. And Sarah gave birth to that baby, and Abraham said, finally, after 25 years of trusting and believing you, here he is. Here he is. There are a lot of times we don't get to see what we've been faithing for. We don't see what we've been hoping for. There's some people involved in this church right now that I had faith for years would get more involved. And they're involved now. Do you know how exciting that is? When you see somebody you've been praying for to be involved here or in some other faith activity. Abraham had to trust God. Had to have that faith. And the question is, can we really trust God? Folks, if we can't trust God, we haven't got a chance of trusting anyone. We haven't got a chance of trusting anyone. Is it easy? No. Is it always fun? No. Is it always evident what's going to happen? No. And that's why you need to have sisters and brothers around you who will believe with you, who will have faith with you. So when your faith lags, they can step up and say, remember how God did this, this, and this? God's not finished yet. Or they can say, we're believing with you, we're praying with you. Because a lot of people think you're crazy if you tell somebody, I'm praying and trusting God. And they go, yeah, and what else? But I believe Scripture tells us over and over again, just like Abraham, that we have to have faith, we have to trust, and we have to wait on God's timing. Because God is always on time. Amen. Amen. He also took a cup from the table. He lifted it to heaven, and he gave thanks for it, and he blessed it. He said, this is my blood
shed for you as a sign of a new and everlasting covenant that promised through Abraham, promised through Moses, all those promises, and now here's a new and complete one. Take and drink of it, each of you. God, help us to remember every time we see this meal, every time we participate in this meal, help us to remember that you are in covenant with